Discovery and Awakening. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, her hands clasped behind her back as she gazed at the massive object floating in the void before them. The holographic display magnified the derelict vessel, highlighting its alien contours and the strange, honeycomb-like structure of its hull. "Anything on sensors, Lieutenant Chen?" she asked, her voice cutting through the hushed silence that had fallen over the bridge crew. Science Officer Kai Chen hunched over his station, his dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of his screens. "Still nothing conclusive, Captain. No power signatures, no radiation beyond background levels. According to preliminary scans, it's been adrift for, well, the dating analysis suggests at least 30,000 years." A collective murmur rippled through the bridge. The oldest known spacefaring civilization, the Cerethi, had only achieved interstellar travel 5,000 years ago. Humanity had barely been exploring the stars for 3 centuries. "Composition?" Elena asked, unable to hide the excitement in her voice. After years of routine survey missions, they had found something truly remarkable. "Unknown, Captain," Chen replied, frustration evident in his tone. "Our scanners can't penetrate more than a few meters into the hull. It's some kind of alloy we've never encountered before." Elena nodded slowly, considering their options. The Horizon was a survey vessel, not a research ship. Protocol dictated they should mark the coordinates, report the find to Earth Command, and continue their mission. But the scientist in her couldn't simply leave this discovery behind. "Commander Rodriguez, prepare a boarding team," she decided. "Full EVA gear, weapons cold. Let's see what's inside." Her executive officer looked up from his console, concern etched on his weathered face. "Captain, with all due respect, we should follow first contact protocols. This discovery is unprecedented. We should wait for a dedicated research vessel." Elena turned to face him fully. "This isn't first contact, XO. Whatever built that ship has been gone for millennia. And we're 6 weeks from the nearest outpost. By the time a research team gets here, someone else might have found it." She glanced meaningfully toward the system's edge, where Cerethi space began less than a light year away. Rodriguez nodded reluctantly. "Yes, Mom. I'll assemble the team." Lieutenant James Mercer, the Horizon's navigation officer, volunteered immediately when the call went out for the boarding party. As the shuttle approached the ancient vessel, he stared through the viewport, transfixed by the massive structure. From this distance, the true scale of the derelict became apparent. It was at least 3 times the size of an Earth dreadnought. "Approaching entry point," reported the pilot, her voice slightly distorted through the comm system. "Looks like some kind of airlock or docking port on the ventral hull." Inside their sealed EVA suits, Mercer and the 5 other team members tensed with anticipation. The shuttle maneuvered carefully, using its maneuvering thrusters to align with what appeared to be an entrance. "This is boarding team to Horizon." Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. "We're preparing to dock and enter the vessel, maintaining comms link." On the Horizon's bridge, Elena leaned forward in her chair. "Acknowledged, XO. Proceed with caution." The boarding team entered through what indeed proved to be an airlock, though the design was unlike anything in human or known alien architecture. The doors opened with surprising ease after engineer Sarah Donovan applied a magnetic coupling device to what looked like a control panel. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light. The architecture was disorienting. Ceilings at varying heights, corridors that curved when logic suggested they should be straight, and doorways positioned at odd angles. "Atmosphere readings?" Rodriguez asked as they moved deeper into the ship. "None, Commander," replied Donovan, checking her instruments. "Complete vacuum. Temperature just above absolute zero." As they progressed, Chen's voice came through their comms from the Horizon. "Any sign of the propulsion system or power core?" "Nothing obvious," Rodriguez answered, directing his light down another corridor. "There are these strange crystal-like structures embedded in the walls. They might be decorative, or they could be technology. Mercer had fallen slightly behind the group, drawn to one particular corridor that the others had passed by. Something about it felt right. He turned down the passage, his light illuminating more of the crystalline formations Rodriguez had mentioned. "Mercer, stay with the group," Rodriguez ordered, noticing his absence. "Sorry, Commander," Mercer replied, but as he turned to rejoin them, his hand brushed against one of the crystal formations. A faint blue glow emanated from the crystal, spreading to neighboring formations like ripples in water. Mercer stumbled back, startled. "What did you do?" Rodriguez demanded, hurrying back to him with the others. "Nothing, sir. I just touched it," Mercer explained, staring at the slowly brightening glow. Donovan scanned the crystals, her instruments beeping in alarm. "I'm detecting an energy signature now. It's weak, but it's there." The glow faded after a few moments, returning the corridor to darkness. But something had changed. Mercer felt it, a subtle vibration through the deck plates, a sense of anticipation in the air. "I think we should return to the ship," Rodriguez decided. "We need to analyze what just happened." As they made their way back to the airlock, Mercer felt a strange reluctance to leave. It was as if the ancient vessel was calling to him, whispering secrets just beyond his comprehension. Back aboard the Horizon, the senior officers gathered in the conference room to discuss their findings. The images from the boarding team played on the main display as Chen presented his analysis. "Whatever these crystals are," he explained, pointing to close-up images, "they appear to function as both power conduits and data storage. When Lieutenant Mercer touched one, it activated a dormant system." "Is it dangerous?" Elena asked, eyeing the blue glow captured in the recordings. Chen shrugged. "Unknown, Captain. But the energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It's not antimatter, fusion, or any conventional power source we understand." "Recommendations?" Elena looked around the table. "We should notify Earth Command immediately," Rodriguez said firmly. "This discovery is too significant to handle alone." Elena nodded reluctantly. "Agreed. Prepare a full report with all scanned data and recordings, but request that we remain as the primary investigation team." As the meeting concluded, Mercer approached the captain. "Ma'am, I'd like to volunteer for the next boarding mission." Elena studied him carefully. "Any particular reason, Lieutenant?" Mercer hesitated. "I can't explain it, Captain, but I feel connected to that ship somehow, like I understand it on some level." Before Elena could respond, the tactical officer's voice came over the intercom. "Captain to the bridge. We're detecting multiple warp signatures entering the system." The bridge erupted into activity as Elena and her officers rushed to their stations. On the main display, 3 ships appeared, moving rapidly toward their position. "Identification," Elena demanded. "Serathi Dominion vessels," the tactical officer confirmed grimly. 1 heavy cruiser and 2 destroyers. They're on an intercept course. Elena's jaw tightened. The Serathi Dominion had an uneasy peace with the Earth Alliance. Neither side had fired on the other in 15 years, but tensions remained high, especially in disputed border regions like this one. "Open a channel," she ordered. The main screen flickered to show a Serathi commander, his scaled face impassive, 4 yellow eyes blinking independently. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the UES Horizon. You are approaching an Earth Alliance vessel in unclaimed space. State your intentions." The Serathi commander's mouth tentacles writhed slightly before he spoke. "I am Commander Vextal of the Serathi Dominion. You have activated an ancient weapon in violation of the Galactic Arms Treaty. Surrender the derelict vessel immediately." Elena kept her expression neutral despite her surprise. "The object we're investigating is an archaeological find, not a weapon. We detected no weapon systems during our preliminary survey." "Your sensors are primitive," Vextal replied dismissively. "Our instruments detected a quantum resonance signature consistent with precursor weapons technology. You will withdraw immediately, or we will remove you by force." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Options?" Alina asked, looking to her tactical officer. "We're outgunned, Captain," he replied grimly. "The Cerethi cruiser alone outclasses us in every category. If they decide to attack." "They won't," Alina interrupted, not without provocation. "The Dominion doesn't want a war any more than we do." She turned to Rodriguez. "XO, get a message to Earth Command. Priority 1. Inform them of the Cerethi presence and request immediate support." As the crew carried out her orders, Alina noticed Mercer staring at the ancient vessel on the display, his expression distant, almost trance-like. "Lieutenant," she prompted. Mercer blinked, focusing on her with effort. "Sorry, Captain. I was just listening." "Listening to what?" Alina asked, concerned by his odd behavior. "The ship," Mercer replied, as if it were obvious. "It's speaking to me." Before Alina could question him further, the tactical officer called out, "Captain." Energy spike from the derelict vessel. All eyes turned to the display. The ancient ship, dark and dormant just moments ago, now glowed with faint blue light along its honeycomb-patterned hull. The crystalline structures they had discovered were illuminating one by one, like stars appearing in the evening sky. "It's activating," Chen whispered in awe. "The entire ship is waking up." On the Cerethi cruiser, Commander Vextal watched with growing alarm as the ancient vessel powered up. His science officer frantically analyzed the energy readings, mandibles clicking with agitation. "Weapons charge," Vextal ordered. "Target the human vessel first, then the precursor ship." Back on the horizon, Alina made a quick decision. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. As the horizon began to move, Lieutenant Mercer suddenly collapsed at his station, his body convulsing. Medical personnel rushed to his side as he gasped for breath. His eyes rolled back. "It's trying to communicate," he choked out between spasms. "It needs a conduit, a mind." The ship's doctor administered a sedative, but Mercer grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Captain," he called, his voice suddenly deeper, more resonant. "The Cerethi are preparing to fire. You must move your vessel away." Alina stared at him in shock. It was Mercer's voice, but somehow not. As if someone else were speaking through him. "Who are you?" she demanded. Mercer's eyes focused on her, glowing with the same blue light as the ancient ship's crystals. "I am the Guardian. And I have awakened." At that moment, the Cerethi cruiser fired, its main cannons launching brilliant green energy beams directly at the horizon. But before they could strike, the ancient vessel moved, far faster than something its size should be able to, interposing itself between the Cerethi weapons and the human ship. The energy beams struck the ancient hull and simply vanished, absorbed without effect. The honeycomb pattern on the vessel's hull now pulsed with blinding blue-white light. Through Mercer, the voice spoke again. "I have slept for too long. The children still fight among themselves." He turned his glowing eyes to Alina. "Remove your people from this place, Captain. What happens next is not for them to witness." As if responding to an unspoken command, the Horizon's engines activated, pushing the ship away from the confrontation. The ancient vessel, now fully awakened, turned to face the Cerethi ships, its hull reconfigured, sections sliding apart to reveal what could only be weapons emplacements, technology far beyond human or Cerethi understanding. Commander Vextal's final order was to fire all weapons, but it came too late. The ancient ship released a single pulse of energy that expanded outward in a perfect sphere, washing over the Cerethi vessels. When it passed, the three warships remained intact but completely dark, drifting lifelessly in space, all power and propulsion systems disabled. On the Horizon's bridge, Mercer collapsed again, the blue glow fading from his eyes as he lost consciousness. As medical personnel carried him to sickbay, Alina stared at the display in awe and terror, watching as the ancient ship turned once more, its attention now focused on the human vessel. The voice of the Guardian now came through the ship's communication system. "We have much to discuss, children of Earth. Revelation and confrontation." The medical bay of the UES Horizon hummed with activity as doctors monitored Lieutenant James Mercer's vital signs. Captain Alina Reyes stood at his bedside, watching his unconscious form with concern. The ship's chief medical officer, Dr. Nadine Okafor, studied her diagnostic tablet with a furrowed brow. "His neural activity is off the charts," Dr. Okafor explained, turning the display toward Alina. "It's as if his brain is processing information at an accelerated rate, far beyond human capability." "Is he in danger?" Alina asked. "I don't know," Okafor admitted. "His vitals are stable, but we're in uncharted territory here. Whatever that entity did to him—" "I volunteered." Mercer's voice interrupted, his eyes suddenly open. "The Guardian didn't take me. I offered myself." Alina leaned closer. "Lieutenant, how do you feel?" Mercer sat up slowly, his movements deliberate. "Different. Expanded." He touched his temple. "There's so much knowledge, centuries of history, advanced technology, the rise and fall of civilizations I never knew existed." "What is that ship?" Alina asked. "Who built it?" Mercer's eyes focused on something distant. "They called themselves the Preservers. They were the first sentient species to achieve interstellar travel in this galaxy, over 1,000,000 years ago." "1,000,000 years?" Dr. Okafor echoed in disbelief. Mercer nodded. "They explored, they built, they seeded worlds with life. But eventually, they encountered something they couldn't overcome, a force that consumed entire star systems. Rather than face extinction, they evolved beyond physical form, becoming beings of pure energy and consciousness." "And the ship?" Alina prompted. "A guardian vessel. They created sentient ships to watch over the younger races, to guide and protect them when necessary. There were hundreds once, stationed throughout the galaxy." Mercer's expression darkened. "Most have been destroyed or have gone dormant as their power sources depleted. This one has been sleeping for 30,000 years, waiting for a crisis that would necessitate its awakening." Before Alina could ask another question, Commander Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, to the bridge. The Serathi have sent reinforcements." Alina's heart sank. "On my way." She turned back to Mercer. "Lieutenant, if you're able, I need you on the bridge." Mercer nodded, already moving to his feet with unexpected steadiness. On the bridge, the tactical display showed 5 new Serathi vessels entering the system. 2 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a massive dreadnought at the center of the formation. "The Iron Stormblade," the tactical officer identified, awe and fear mingling in his voice. Everyone on the bridge knew the reputation of the Serathi flagship. The Iron Stormblade was the pride of the Dominion fleet, a vessel that had never been defeated in battle. Its weapons could reduce a small moon to asteroids, and its shields had withstood concentrated fire from an entire human battle group during the border wars. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "On screen," Alina ordered, straightening her uniform. The main display showed a Serathi admiral, distinguished by the elaborate crest that framed his scaled face. 6 eyes, rather than the typical 4, marked him as a member of the ruling caste. "I am Supreme Admiral Krathven of the Serathi Dominion," he announced without preamble. "Your vessel has interfered with Dominion operations and disabled 3 of our warships. This act of aggression will not stand." Alina kept her expression neutral. "Admiral, your ships fired on us without provocation. The ancient vessel acted independently to protect us." Krathven's mouth tentacles writhed in what humans had learned to recognize as contempt. "That precursor weapon is the property of the Dominion by right of proximity to our space. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed." "The Guardian is not a weapon," Alina countered, "and it belongs to no one. It's a sentient entity with its own will." The Admiral's 6 eyes narrowed. "You have 1 hour to depart this system. After that, we will open fire." The communication ended abruptly. Options? Elena asked, looking around at her senior officers. Rodriguez shook his head grimly. We're outmatched, Captain. Even if we ran at maximum warp, they could intercept us before we reach Alliance space. The Guardian won't let them harm us, Mercer said as he entered the bridge, drawing all eyes to him. Lieutenant, Elena acknowledged. What exactly can this Guardian do against 5 Serathi warships, including the Iron Stormblade? Mercer smiled faintly. The Guardian was designed to protect developing civilizations from extinction-level threats. The Serathi fleet is substantially less than that. Are you saying it could defeat them? Rodriguez asked skeptically. Instead of answering directly, Mercer approached the main console. May I, Captain? He asked, gesturing to the controls. Elena nodded, and Mercer brought up a communication channel to the ancient vessel. Guardian, he spoke aloud. The humans need to understand your capabilities before they make a decision. Can you show them? The ancient ship, still floating between the horizon and the Serathi fleet, pulsed once with blue light. Suddenly, a holographic display appeared in the center of the horizon's bridge, showing the Guardian vessel from multiple angles, with glowing points highlighting various systems. This is what the Serathi fear, Mercer explained, walking around the hologram. The Guardian vessels were created to face threats that could destroy entire star systems. Its hull is composed of materials that don't exist in nature. They have to be created in the heart of a dying star. Its shields don't just block energy. They exist partially in higher dimensions, making them essentially impenetrable to conventional weapons. He pointed to several glowing nodes on the ship's hull. These are quantum field generators. They can disable electronic systems without harming organic life, as you saw with the first Serathi vessels. They can also create localized distortions in spacetime, allowing for near-instantaneous travel or the redirection of enemy weapons fire. And offensive capabilities? Elena asked quietly. Mercer hesitated. The Preservers were not warriors by nature, but they understood the necessity of force. The Guardian carries weapons that can target specific systems or components without destroying entire ships. It could disable the Iron Stormblade's weapons, engines, and shields without killing a single Serathi. Could. Rodriguez caught the qualification. Or would. That depends on the Serathi, Mercer replied. The Guardian prefers nonviolent solutions, but it will respond to aggression in kind. Elena studied the hologram thoughtfully. Lieutenant, how much control do you have over the Guardian? None, Mercer said simply. I'm not its controller, I'm its translator. It chose me because my mind was somehow compatible with its communication methods, but it makes its own decisions. Can you communicate our intentions to it? Elena pressed. Make it understand that we want to avoid conflict if possible. Mercer nodded. It already understands. The Guardian has been observing humanity since it first detected our radio transmissions nearly 2 centuries ago. It knows our history, our strengths, our flaws. It considers us promising. For the next hour, Elena and her officers prepared for the worst while hoping for a diplomatic solution. She sent multiple messages to the Serathi fleet, proposing joint research of the Guardian vessel and sharing of any knowledge gained, but received no response. As the deadline approached, tension on the bridge reached a breaking point. The tactical officer monitored the Serathi ships, reporting when they began powering up their weapons systems. They're targeting us, Captain, he announced grimly. All 5 vessels have locked on. Elena made her final decision. Raise shields. Power up engines but hold position. She turned to Mercer. Tell the Guardian we've done everything we can to avoid conflict. Mercer closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. It knows. The main display showed the Serathi fleet advancing in perfect formation, the massive Iron Stormblade at the center. Against the backdrop of stars, they presented an intimidating spectacle of military might. They're firing. The tactical officer shouted. Multiple green energy beams lanced out from the Serathi vessels, converging on the Guardian ship. Just as before, The ancient vessel absorbed the attacks without apparent damage, its honeycomb hull pulsing with increasingly bright blue light. "The Guardian is asking permission to respond," Mercer said quietly. Alina looked at him in surprise. "It needs our permission." "Not technically, but it respects your authority in this region of space. It's a courtesy." Alina took a deep breath. "Tell it to disable their weapons systems only. No casualties if it can be avoided." Mercer nodded, and a moment later, the Guardian vessel moved. It accelerated with impossible speed, positioning itself directly in front of the Iron Stormblade. A series of precise energy pulses emanated from the ancient ship, striking specific points on each Serathi vessel. On the bridge of the Iron Stormblade, alarms blared as systems failed throughout the massive dreadnought. Weapons, shields, engines, all went dark in sequence, leaving only life support and emergency power functioning. Supreme Admiral Krath Ven roared in fury as his legendary flagship drifted helplessly, its fearsome weapons neutralized in seconds by technology he could barely comprehend. "Secondary weapons. Target their engines," he ordered, but his tactical officer could only shake his head in dismay. "All weapon systems are offline, Admiral. We're detecting some kind of quantum field disruption affecting all electronic systems." Krath Ven stared at the viewscreen, watching as the ancient vessel methodically disabled each of his support ships with the same ease. In his entire career spanning 2 centuries of Serathi military dominance, he had never witnessed such a one-sided engagement. On the horizon, the bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the feared Serathi fleet was neutralized without a single shot being fired in return. "The Guardian is hailing the Iron Stormblade," Mercer announced. "It's offering them terms." "What terms?" Alina asked. "Withdraw from this region of space. Acknowledge that the Guardian vessel is not subject to territorial claims by any current civilization. Agree to peaceful cooperation in studying the Preserver legacy." The communication channel suddenly activated, showing Admiral Krath Ven's face contorted with barely contained rage. "This is not over, humans," he snarled. "You have no idea what forces you're meddling with." "Perhaps not," Alina replied calmly, "but we're willing to learn. The Guardian has offered you peaceful terms. I suggest you accept them." Krath Ven's 6 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of intense calculation in Serathi body language. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. "We will withdraw," he conceded, "but the Dominion Council will hear of this encounter. Expect diplomatic representatives within the month." The channel closed, and the bridge crew let out a collective breath. "They're powering up emergency thrusters," the tactical officer reported, moving away slowly. Alina turned to Mercer. "Will the Guardian allow them to leave?" "Yes," Mercer confirmed. "It has no interest in unnecessary conflict. Once they're at a safe distance, it will release the quantum field, allowing their main systems to reactivate." "And then what?" Alina asked the question that had been bothering her since the Guardian awakened. "What are its plans now that it's active again?" Mercer's expression became distant, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. "It wishes to establish contact with other dormant Guardians scattered throughout the galaxy. There are threats approaching that neither humans nor Serathi are prepared to face alone." "What kind of threats?" Rodriguez asked, tension evident in his voice. "The same kind that prompted the Preservers to transcend physical form," Mercer said grimly. "The Guardian doesn't have complete information. It's been dormant too long. But it knows something is coming from the galactic core, something that has already consumed dozens of star systems." Alina exchanged worried glances with her officers. "How long do we have?" "Decades, perhaps a century," Mercer replied. "The Guardian isn't certain, but it's willing to help prepare both humanity and the Serathi. It has knowledge of technologies that could advance our civilization by centuries." "In exchange for what?" Alina asked skeptically. Mercer smiled slightly. "Understanding. The Guardians were created to protect and guide younger races until they were ready to take their place among the elder civilizations of the galaxy. The Preservers believed in potential. that given time and guidance, any sentient species could evolve beyond conflict and short-sightedness. He gestured to the view screen, where the Sci-Fi fleet was slowly retreating. What you just witnessed wasn't a demonstration of superior firepower. It was a lesson. The Guardian could have destroyed those ships, but chose not to. It's showing both humanity and the Sci-Fi that there are alternatives to destruction. Alina considered this. And if we refuse its guidance, if we choose our own path, then it will respect that choice, Mercer said simply. The Guardians protect and offer counsel, but never impose their will. The Preservers believed that freedom of choice was fundamental to true advancement. Over the next few days, as Earth Command dispatched a research fleet to their position, the Horizon's crew began the monumental task of documenting and studying the Guardian vessel. With Mercer acting as intermediary, they learned about civilizations that had risen and fallen millions of years before humanity's ancestors had even evolved. The Guardian shared knowledge selectively, careful not to overwhelm humanity with technologies it wasn't ready to handle responsibly. Instead, it offered insights into renewable energy, sustainable ecosystems, and medical advances that could immediately benefit Earth without disrupting its social development. 1 week after the confrontation with the Sci-Fi fleet, a formal diplomatic delegation arrived from the Dominion. To everyone's surprise, Supreme Admiral Krathven led the mission personally, his pride apparently overcome by curiosity and pragmatism. In the Horizon's conference room, humans and Sci-Fi sat together to discuss cooperation for perhaps the first time in their shared history. The holographic presence of the Guardian, manifested through the ship's communication systems, mediated the discussion. Our scientists have analyzed the quantum field technology the Guardian used against our ships, Krathven admitted reluctantly. We cannot replicate it, nor can we defend against it. If similar threats are indeed approaching from the galactic core, both our civilizations are equally vulnerable. Alina nodded. Then perhaps it's time to set aside our territorial disputes and focus on mutual survival. The Guardian has offered to share its knowledge with both our peoples. The Sci-Fi Admiral's mouth tentacles writhed thoughtfully. Our history teaches us to be suspicious of gifts, especially from ancient powers. But in this case, I see little alternative. Through Mercer, the Guardian spoke. The knowledge I offer is not a gift. It is your inheritance, the legacy of those who came before, preserved for those who would come after. How you use it will determine whether you join the community of advanced civilizations or follow so many others into extinction. As the diplomatic discussions continued, Mercer found a quiet moment to speak with Alina privately on the observation deck, overlooking both the Horizon and the Guardian vessel floating serenely beside it. You haven't asked the most important question, Mercer said, watching the stars beyond the viewport. Which is? Alina prompted. Why me? Why did the Guardian choose me as its translator? He turned to face her. It wasn't random, Captain. The Preservers left markers in the genetic code of promising species throughout the galaxy. Certain humans carry these markers, dormant sequences that make our minds compatible with their technology. Alina studied him carefully. Are you still human, James? He smiled reassuringly. Completely. The Guardian hasn't changed me. It's merely awakened abilities that were always there, waiting for the right moment. He gestured to the stars. And I'm not the only one. There are others like me on Earth and in the colonies, carrying the same potential. The Guardian can sense them. A genetic legacy from a civilization that died out 1 million years ago. Alina mused. It's hard to comprehend. The Preservers didn't die, Mercer corrected gently. They evolved. And someday, if we choose the right path, humanity might join them. He looked back at the viewport, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. But first, we have to survive what's coming. As if responding to his words, the Guardian vessel pulsed once with blue light, a silent affirmation of the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. In the following months, a joint human Sci-Fi research initiative was established to study the Guardian and its technology. Other nations from both civilizations joined the effort, setting aside centuries of mistrust in the face of a greater common purpose. The ancient ship that no one had feared, until it demonstrated its power against the mighty Iron Stormblade, became the catalyst for an unprecedented era of cooperation and advancement. Humanity took its first tentative steps toward joining the community of elder races, guided by the silent wisdom of those who had traveled the stars when Earth was still young. And somewhere in the vast darkness beyond the galactic core, ancient forces stirred, sensing the awakening of a guardian vessel after 30,000 years of silence. The coming conflict would test not only the technological advancement of the younger races, but their capacity for unity, sacrifice, and understanding. The true measure of civilization in a universe older and stranger than any had imagined. Lieutenant James Mercer, standing on the bridge of the guardian vessel that had chosen him, looked into that darkness without fear. Humanity had always faced the unknown with curiosity and courage. Now, with new allies and ancient guidance, they would face it together. The ship that no one had feared had become humanity's greatest hope, not because of its weapons, but because of the wisdom it carried from those who had faced the darkness before and found a way to become the light.